This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to a very humid and quite overcast Ambient Punda, where we are sitting here with the 3 young cheetahs and their impala carcass from last night. They do seem to be sleeping, just resting. They've got quite big stomachs, so I think they are just going to be sleeping for a little bit around here. Welcome aboard your very own safari, live from the African bush. Welcome back, everybody, to Ambient Punda, where we're with these 3 young cheetah, and as you can see, they are all lying pretty flat. This one that we on at the moment's got a very rounded belly. You can see a nice big bump there at the stomach, and the tail swishing. Lots of flies around this morning, especially because there is a carcass around here, a male impala carcass. So I think that's also bringing the flies around. But my name's Chad. On camera, we've got Craig this morning. And we set out to look for these cheetah, and we came across them not even 5 minutes from home base. And they were in a similar area to where we left them last night. And I know there were a couple of questions last night on what they'll do if they'll leave the carcass and things. And I think these cheetahs, they just moved a little bit away from the carcass last night. And then early this morning, once that sun started to rise, then they moved a little bit closer to the carcass. And I mean, there is still a little bit of meat left at that carcass. So I think these cheetahs are just resting, trying to digest their food a little bit. And then most likely they'll go back to that carcass and try and get a little bit more meat. But I think our plan for this morning will be to sit here for a little while, see what these cheetahs do get up to, if they do maybe go back to feed. But otherwise, one of my fellow rangers, he saw drag marks from a leopard that potentially killed a impala or nyala last night. And they did find the carcass, but there's no leopard around. There are leopard tracks around that carcass. So I think we might, from here in a little while, maybe go sit at that carcass a little bit and see maybe if that leopard does come back. Maybe she's even done the same as these cheetahs, just moved off a little bit to try and digest her food, and then she might come back a little bit later. But I think because it is quite overcast this morning, it's quite humid. I think we'll try and see if we can see some of the cats this morning. But I think let's take a look at today's weather forecast.
Sunny everywhere indeed, especially here in Djuma. Welcome to my live safari vehicle. We're just admiring the dwarf mongoose that have just woke up and they're making their coffee. My name is Lauren. I do have Impo on camera. Of course, we check the hyena dens. Nothing, well, nobody is there. It's not active. So I guess dwarf mongoose are the next best thing, the closest relatives to the hyenas. So if we can't get the spotties, then we'll come for the dwarfies. And although we can't see them very well, we're going for the backlit approach. The sun is behind us. Now, I am on a search for leopards today. It's been a few days since I've seen one. It's been a few days since anyone in Djuma has seen one. There's lots of activity in the west. Sibui's on a kill on a property called Hoffman's. Shidulu is on a property called Safari. Tandy's missing in action, and Kuchava's on Cheetah Plains. So we have got an idea where some leopards are, but they're not accessible to us. So we're going to try really, really hard to get some spots for you this morning. If it's not going to be in the form of hyenas, then it'll at least be in the form of some leopards. Now, because our drives are a little bit later now, that means that our start time coincides with the dwarf mongoose waking up. They will not move from their mound before that sun is up. It's not safe, and, well, why would you want to? So that's them all just, you see, they're all just sort of slowly starting to wake up and looking around. Is there any danger present? Are there any threats around? Not just threats on the ground in forms of terrestrial predators, but are there any aerial threats? Maybe a big raptor sitting in the tree? Snakes? Snakes are also predators of the dwarf mongoose. So that's what they're doing. They're sleepy. They're looking around for any potential danger, and very slowly they'll start grooming, itching, scratching, and then they'll begin their day. But this is a mound not too far from the hyena den, and we see them here regularly. It's probably the same sort of group of dwarf mongoose. Business, should we say, because they use the same mounds time and time again. Now, just a quick update on yesterday. We tried to get a genitalia check of Intima's cub, and it did look slightly pinched, didn't it? Thank you all who sent me screenshots, leaning towards a boy, but we need to look a little bit more closely next time. So as I bumble on looking for my spots, we are going to send you across to Andrew to say good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Djuma Private Game Reserve. This morning here we got our beautiful Ngoma Pride, which they came in last night. We had them up on the western Sumambile, but I think we were so much more likely to have them this morning. Western side of quarantine, and I'm Andrew on camera. I have David this morning, so it's a good start to start with the Pride of Line as Ngoma Pride. So since we followed them last night and we lost them into one of the thicket, wet, and then we couldn't keep up with them there, and they finally make their way into a quarantine. They probably all over in this brush, guys, but this is the only one we can keep visual of it now. I only seen a few move into this wood, but it looks like they didn't eat anything recently. Maybe they were on hunting the whole night. Alex, so you're saying it's great to see Nkohuma Pride. Indeed, it is actually great to see them back in Djuma. But I can't recall when I've seen them in Djuma. It's probably a while. So it's actually very nice to have them back here again. There's quite a few movement inside there, so they're probably still trying to reposition themselves, find a beautiful shade before what to take place if they decided to sleep around in this thicket. So we're going to stay put here to see if we can maybe see more of them.
It's the month of March and Wild Earth is offering you the chance to win a brand new prize. Sign up to be a Wild Earth Explorer and you could win a 5-day eco-training ranger experience for 2. Eco-training is the pioneer and leader in safari guide and wildlife training in Africa. The lucky winners can look forward to approaching dangerous game on foot, tracking and 4x4 driving, learning about animal behavior, and even spending one night sleeping out under a blanket of stars. In addition, you will also get the exclusive opportunity to join the Wild Earth team on the broadcasting vehicle. Sign up to be an explorer now, and it could be you that wins this life-changing experience. Terms and conditions apply.
Riverbeds are a great way to find water and look for places where elephant have excavated hollows. You can then dig into the sand, and after a couple of feet you should find damp sand, which then can be squeezed out or siphoned off for water. And with water being one of our scarcest resources, it is a good idea to conserve water where and how you can.
My name is Lauren and I'm currently working in Djuma Private Game Reserve here in South Africa. I love answering your questions during the live safaris. It's my favorite part. It feels like you're on the vehicle with me and I'm able to teach you exactly what you want to know. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, you must go to the live safari page and ask your question below the live feed.
Hello, Mama. Just checking us out, everybody. There's no aggression here. Very relaxed. A herd of elephants moving around your car like that is truly, truly magical.
Tune into Wild Earth every single day. It's in your nature.
So from these cheetah being very sleepy and not lifting their heads at all, to the cheetah coming back to feed, and just a warning to the viewers, if you are a sensitive viewer, I'd maybe just look away for a little bit as these cheetahs are starting to feed on this impala carcass. It's amazing to see this little cheetah. It's using all its strength to try and cut through the cartilage and things. Darcy, and I'm also very, very happy that these cheetahs were able to keep their carcass overnight. I mean, I don't think they protected it, but they are very lucky that it is still in the same spot where we left them yesterday. I mean, just to give you a perspective, from where we are, where that leopard killed the impala, is probably 200, 300 meters away. So, I mean, they are quite lucky. Maybe if that leopard might have missed that impala that it killed last night, it maybe would have even come this way. And so I think they are very lucky, but I'm very happy that they are able to still continue feeding. And I think now that it is the morning, I mean, it's not too early. So I think a lot of those nocturnal cats are starting to rest for the morning. And I think they've got a good chance that they'll be able to finish off this carcass. Excuse me. And I mean, from yesterday when we were here, the amount they've eaten is quite a lot. I mean, they've eaten some of the ribs, they've eaten the hind legs, basically off this impala, And I think now they're trying to get to the meat all around the shoulder. I mean, you can see how this cheetah is like almost ripping at the skin, using those carnassial shears right at the back of its mouth. And they're almost trying to like peel away the skin, because the cheetahs, they don't often feed off the skin. So you often find around carcasses that cheetahs have been on, you'll often find the skin around. But I think this cheetah's trying to get right to that shoulder meat of this impala. You can actually even see, like, this cheetah, when she feeds, you can see her like crunching the bone. It's quite soft to hear, but I mean, you can see how she's crunching through the cartilage of this impala. You can see her ears are twitching quite a lot. And I think she's just trying to get rid of those flies. I mean, you can see the flies all around that impala. But this cheetah's not worried about the flies too much. All she's worried about is this impala carcass and how much she's going to be able to feed off it. And it's also quite interesting, we were speaking yesterday about the stomach contents and how cheetahs often will work around the stomach contents, just to not open it and just not to give off that smell of the stomach contents. And I mean, it's quite difficult to see now just over this cheetah, but I can still see that the lining and all the stomach contents are still intact. And I mean, we're probably sitting maybe 7 or 8 meters away from this carcass, and it doesn't actually smell at all. I mean, the wind is sort of swirling around us, and I can't actually smell the carcass. So, I mean, they've done a pretty good job. And there's one of the other siblings that's now just joined in feeding. How amazing to start your Tuesday morning with cheetahs feeding on an impala carcass. A nice little bit of breakfast for these guys. See how that cheetah on the left-hand side is actually like tearing away the skin. So, Charles, if this carcass did decompose, they wouldn't eat it. So, cheetahs, they only really enjoy fresh carcasses. So, when I say fresh, I mean probably 1 or 2 days, like they'll feed on. So, I mean, yesterday was day 1, today's day 2. But cheetahs won't scavenge off old carcasses. They're not like leopard or hyena. They will often kill their own meat. I mean, maybe if they come across a fresh carcass, will they feed on it? But they don't go out looking for carcasses to scavenge on. And if it is like a hot day and they can't get the carcass into there is another vehicle coming into the site, and that's what you can hear. But yeah, if they do kill a fresh carcass, they'll feed on it. And if it is in the sun, what they'll often do is they won't feed too much, just because it does rot quite quickly. And yeah, so they prefer all the freshest meat around, unlike leopard and hyena that will often scavenge off quite a rotten carcass. You can see they both really getting involved there around the shoulder blade of this impala. It's just amazing to watch them, how they pull in at this impala. And cheetahs, you can see they're not even chewing. They often chew the cartilage or the meat off and then just swallow it whole. They seem like they are really, really enjoying that part of the impala. It's amazing to see, I mean, that they were all sleeping almost dead flat when we got here. And now, I mean, 2 of them are feeding. I wonder how long it will take for the third one to come and feed. I can see the third one. It is quite far off into the bush. I can just see that tail flicking, but it's probably 6 or 7 meters away. And I wonder how long it will take for that cheetah to come and feed. Maybe it was the last one that fed and it's just trying to digest a little bit more before it does start to come back and try and get a little bit more meat. I know it is a little bit gruesome, but you can actually see there around the ribs how they've eaten quite a lot of the ribs, and you can see that they eat all that meat in between the ribs, or all that cartilage in between the ribs. And I mean, it might be interesting even to come past here a little bit later and see how much meat is actually left. And I've got a feeling that there's not going to be too much left once these cheetahs are done with this carcass. And Ninamu, so, I mean, these cheetahs, it's a very rare thing to happen, like that these cheetahs' mom got killed and then we put them into like a secluded area on Punda to grow up a little bit and then to release them again once they were around 10 or 11 months old. But I mean, I can never say that they will all survive, but there is good potential that these cheetahs will survive. I mean, they're at an age where they are able to catch animals. And, I mean, there are quite a lot of other predators on Punda, so you never know what could happen to them overnight. But I think that they do have a good possibility of surviving. I mean, the reason also that we have the collars on them is that the research people on Punda, they often monitor them quite closely. You know, often go out looking for them daily just to see how they're doing, have a look at their body condition and all of that. So I think with that monitoring, I think they should be all fine. And hopefully if you are a Safari Live viewer that often watches, it will be nice to watch and see these cheetahs as they do grow up. So I don't think we're going to go anywhere for now. I mean, it's one special thing to see cheetahs feeding. But for now, we're going to send you over to Pridelands, who want to say good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the dawn here on Eco Training Pridelands, where it is apparently 22 degrees Celsius, 71 degrees Fahrenheit, but it really feels a lot warmer than that. Hello, everybody. My name is Steve, joined by Gert on camera, and as always, we're very excited to have you out with us on Bushwalk. We are here on a small area on Pridelands called Kilikopi, and we are with our trusty backup this morning. His name is James. Smile for the camera, James. There we go. So we're going to just be working around this area. There's lots of little rocky outcrops. The word koppie comes from the Afrikaans word to mean small head. And so basically it's a little sort of rocky outcrop that is exposed out of the Earth's surface. And this is made of dolerite. We've spoken before about dolerite. Dolerite is that mayonnaise in your sandwich when you squash it. It pushes up, but never exposed onto the Earth's crust. The Earth's sort of crust or the surface around it eroded or weathered down to expose these sort of much heavier, harder rocks underneath. They come through in sort of lines. It's actually quite easy to see on those rocks over there. You can actually see how they are in a line. Imagine if you pushed the mayonnaise up, how it would squeeze in a line between your tomato and your patty. And so that is how the dolerite sort of would have come up. That's why they're in lines. They're called sills, also known as dikes. A very wonderful area to explore. There's a couple of them just poking out over here. And they've been standing the test of time for a very, very long time. So if you have any questions pertaining to us here on Pridelands, please feel free to send them through. I'd love to answer them this morning. It is my last morning for now. I'll be heading on a stint of leave, but I'll be back at Djuma next week, the 16th, to continue on the process that side. But it has been a splendid opportunity, side training. We've had rain, we've had sunshine, we've had wonderful, wonderful activities. And while there's not only ourselves out this morning, of course you know that, we've also got Tswalu Kalahari.
Good morning from Tswalu. We have our little Xhosa meerkat family here with one of the 3 little pups is out at this stage. So you with me, Deirdre, and on camera this morning with me is BK. So for the meerkats, we walk in on foot, so we're on our little mobile kit. But I'm going to move around and move a little bit closer to BK because they get a bit confused when they've got people on either side of them. They don't know which way to look, so we rather just I sit next to BK and then they're very, very relaxed. So yeah, these little guys, a couple of weeks old already, they'll start already begging and foraging and moving with the rest of the group. And then the sub-adults are slightly older ones. You can see they're the alpha female on the left of the screen. They are just too cute when they're this size, and they grow so quickly. So BT is asking the question, are the pups still nursing? At this age, they should, you can see the suckling marks on the female, so they're getting a little bit of milk, but not too much. She's already started to wean them. So sometimes towards the end of their weaning, it's just a little bit of milk for some comfort, but they are already at this stage consuming most of their food, or their nutrients are coming from insects that they're getting while they move with the group. They've all seen, it looked like an entire herd of springbok running in the background, which is what they're looking at now, but a bit too far for us. So for at least the first sort of 16 to 18 days, well, there's your answer. He's going to maybe suckle a little bit. The first sort of 16 to 18 days, they're below the ground, so they only start emerging around then. And then for about 10 days or so in and out before they actually start moving. So they're around about a month old when they actually start moving with the rest of the group. There we go. You might see that little one try and suckle a little bit. Chris is asking the question, how big can they get? So that meerkat standing just sort of about 25 to 30 centimeters. They're only about a kilogram, just over a kilogram in weight. So you're seeing the adult female there, that's as big as they get. Oops. Oh, you can't not laugh at them when they do funny things like that. So the sub-adults here, they're probably already about 6 months old. So she can, within a month of those ones coming out, she can fall pregnant again, and then she carries for another 2 months, and then she'll have youngsters. I think it's actually, just over 70 days. Oh. They're using each other as a support system there so that they can get the sun in the morning. This is going to go, somebody's going to fall over. Yep. Leandra's comment is that they are so precious. They are just too cute, especially when they're this small, and they still don't really have full coordination and balance. They're trying to be adult meerkats, but they're still very small. So part of that process that allows us to sit so close to them and be on foot with them is the fact that we find them constantly. We find them every day, and we spend some time with them when we sit with them. So as soon as the pups emerge for the first time, they are seeing people's faces, and there is no threat to them. And the adults are relaxed with the people, so they learn quickly that we are no threat with them. That's how we are able to do this. But it takes a very long time to work with a wild group to get them to this point. It can take you a year or 2 years to get them to this point. So we're really, really fortunate that we've got the 3 groups here that we can sit this close to and view and bring this to you live. There's very, very faint sort of chittering. They're busy talking to each other, but it's very, very faint. I don't think that the mic will pick it up, but it's just little reassurances. The pups are getting reassured by the adults that everything's okay. it's obviously the best spot for the sun. It's just there. So it's starting to go into much cooler in the mornings. There was definitely a bit of a bite this morning in the air, so they are going to want to warm up a little bit. Even us, it's starting to become the time where it's beanies and scarves and gloves start coming out before the sun rises. So they were a little bit cold this morning. It's bedtime warming up, so it's a very thin layer of hair on their chest, so they do need to warm up a little bit. So while he's snoozing and possibly falling over, we're going to send you across to Ngala that would like to say hello.
Good morning and welcome. Welcome to And Beyond Ngala, everyone. And as you can see this morning, just through the small leadwood trees there, we've got a family group of southern ground hornbills that we've managed to find this morning. You can currently see 3, 4 moving through the grass. And in this little family unit over the last couple of weeks, we've seen, oh, there he comes, the 5th one. So there are 5 southern ground hornbills in picture, which is really quite amazing to see this early in the morning. And you can see them moving through the grass very slowly, looking for any types of insects to feed on this morning. And then if there are bigger prey species, they will also look to feed on them. There they're coming nice and beautifully into picture. My name is Nick, and behind camera we've got Odie this morning. And it's a really lovely morning on And Beyond Ngala. It's nice and clear and warm day here. And we have headed over to where that lioness was in the den site yesterday. She's not there at the moment, so she must have moved out maybe to hunt last night. You can see there's also a blue wildebeest bull in picture. He's also quite a common resident in this part of the property. The ground hornbills are quite interesting this morning, and over the last couple of weeks there's been lots and lots of food available for them. So they've been feeding on grasshoppers and any insects really that they are able to find in the grass. There's one there that has got its wings out. Oh, there one also just ate a grasshopper. It's quite funny watching them, the way if they do find something in the grass, they sort of throw it up into the air, knock their head back and swallow it whole. The one with the wings out looks like it might be having a little bit of a scratch this morning. And that one looks like it might be one of the adults as well. It's a much larger bird than the others. We have seen them pecking at tortoises as well, where they flip over the tortoise and use that large bill to break through the carapace, something that is not seen very often. And then also they do tend to feed on snakes if they are able to catch them. I think this morning they would have roosted somewhere around here. There are a couple dead trees where they can roost for the evening, and then as the sun comes out this morning, they more than likely would have given their territorial call, which is quite a beautiful noise to hear in the bush, and then hop down onto the ground and off they go foraging into the morning. Interesting that there are 5 of them here. As I mentioned, there will be the pair of mature adults that will be the breeding pair, and they would have had all 3 of the other chicks. Well, they're no longer chicks. They have all been with this group for quite a while, and they're a little bit older now. And being communal breeders, those other chicks, or the 3 that aren't the breeding pair, will help feed and rear the chicks that are more than likely in the nesting site at the moment. And there is a couple nesting sites along the Timbavati River. One that we know of is about maybe a kilometre west of us on the northern bank, in a big hollow cavity in a jackalberry tree. So I think we're going to sit here, watch these hornbills for a little bit longer, and then move on and try to see if we can't find tracks of the lions that we had in the riverbed, maybe even those 2 big male lions. But for now, we're going to send you over to Steve at Pridelands.
Well, thank you, Nick, and welcome back to Kilikopi here on Eco Training Pridelands, everyone, where I wanted to talk about specialization of certain plants. And I've definitely spoken about pioneers and spoken about adaptations of plants, but one plant that really stands apart from the rest are these rock figs. I believe this to be the giant rock fig. It's not easy to tell at the moment, but it seems to be the one. But the ability of this plant to grow on the rock. Now, you can tell by the leaves that it's a fig. Like very sort of broad elephant-shaped leaves, very prominent leaf veins, quite prominent underneath as well. And if I had to pick one of these leaves, there'd be a milky latex. Poor little fellow here doesn't have many leaves, so I'm not going to pick any. But generally all figs, when you pick, they've got a milky latex in the leaf, right at the petiole where you pluck it out. But now, how did this fellow get here? And how has he evolved to be here? And what's very interesting is, for example, a bird would have eaten the fig and then deposited the seed on the rock, almost similar to how these lizards have deposited their dung there. They're mainly insects, though. But a seed would have fallen here from a baboon or a monkey or a bird, and the seed probably would have fallen into this little crack or crevice, or maybe it was even before there was a crack or crevice, and that seed is able to then germinate on this rock surface. Now, this rock surface can get incredibly hot, so first of all, it needs to be protected against that. But seeds of these figs require enormous temperatures to germinate, where most other plants don't normally want to get too hot when they germinate. And then it'll germinate on the rock, and then the first little roots that sort of form slowly break down and weather a little bit of the rock that you see below it. And that actually gets its nutrients, and it starts to shoot down small tendrils of roots to the ground, normally small little red ones. And then once it reaches the ground and reaches the nutrients and the water in the ground, it starts to bulk up and to grow. The stems and roots then start to form this very white sort of coloration. And the white is a hugely reflecting sort of agent which protects it against the heat of the sun, enabling this plant to then grow on the rock. Now, why does it want to grow on the rock? Well, figs are very soft wood, and this particular one has evolved into a niche that nothing else really grows on. There's nothing else growing on these rocks apart from some lichen and this fellow. And so they like to grow away from herbivory where they're not going to get eaten. But this fellow, a little bit low down perhaps, he's been eaten a few times by all sorts of organisms. So he's done very, very well. But we talk about weathering all the time. What is weathering? Weathering is the breaking up of rock. And now slowly but surely over time, with the seed germinating and growing in there, this fig is growing into the crack, and it's actually splitting this rock apart. Now, eventually over time, with pressure, because water, if you put air or water into something, you keep pumping it and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, eventually has the ability to crack very hard substances, and this rock will eventually fall off and completely drop to the ground, which is essentially weathering, because that is the breaking up of a rock. And it's also weathers it down so as to live off some of the nutrients. Only a small amount in the beginning. There are nutrients in that rock itself, but once it gets to the ground where its roots penetrate and get the water, these things can grow into quite elaborate trees over these rocky outcrops, which make the most amazing habitat. And what is also very unique about all figs is they are called obligate symbionts, which means that most figs have got a very specific wasp that are required to fertilize the figs that they have. The fig itself is produced, it lets off a pheromone, and the pheromone goes out and about. Fig wasps come, the fig wasp bores itself into the fig, and then the fig closes up. That female, who's actually come from another fig down the way, comes laden with eggs, parasites, and pollen. Eggs of herself and pollen from the other fig. And then it's complete internal fertilization of the egg. She unpacks the pollen, she then lays her eggs, and then a lot of the parasites that have infested her body will then also go out as well. And then the eggs hatch inside. And that entire process is essential for the survival of the fig, for the survival of the wasp. The two organisms could not survive without each other. Okay, well, wonderful stories about figs. We're going to send you over to Juma and Lauren.
We are hot on the tail of some fresh female leopard tracks, but we drove past our little Battelier love nest and we thought we would just check in. So we have Papa, I think, standing guard, looking very beautiful. And then Impo's just going to show you the nest. It's really not the best angles, everyone, but this nest is extremely tricky to sort of get any view. Mama's there, but she's sort of very, I think it's down a little bit, Impo. Yep, think down. Go down. There you go. It's in that fork. So still can't really see a view of any sort of chick, but there's definitely activity there. Are we able to get any closer, or is that our view? There we go. She's there. You can see that coppery sort of shoulder patch of the wing. But you can't see any other sort of signs of a chick. But there's definitely, I'm sort of now more on the side that there's definitely a chick in there. Mama's very attentive. She's here all day. And of course, Papa's here too. So I think if we just keep checking every single day, one day, we're going to see a fluffy little head or some sign of movements. But it's a long incubation period of 2 months for one egg. That alone tells you it's a very high level of investment. And she's been sitting on this nest for quite some time now. I would say a little bit more than 2 months. So I think it's just worth checking, and checking. Every single time we drive past, we're going to just at least give you a view. So now that I've checked on my battle ear nest, I'm going to keep tracking this female leopard.
Wild Earth is launching a brand new bushwalk from Pride Lands. With a slew of potential dangers lurking, it's essential to be aware of your surroundings whilst walking in the wilderness.
20 yards away from one of the most endangered species. This is a big bull.
What a moment, what a close encounter with an Ellie bull. He's just over here now. He's moved completely away.
Being on a bushwalk and seeing a leopard, I mean, it's ridiculous to be this close to a leopard on foot and for him not to run is absolutely insane. How crazy was that?
Through the gap there is just the back of the head of a male lion. He is absolutely unaware that we are here right now. I tell you, seeing lions on foot, it definitely brings out the caveman in you, this little scared human being.
What are you looking at, man? That's its gangster face. It has the manners of a common variety vagabond. Look at it, chewing with its mouth open like that.
My name is Steve, and one of my favorite things at Wild Earth is getting questions from you. The type of questions that I really like are those ones that really help us to unpack and understand and really integrate the ecological knowledge and fully appreciate the importance that animals such as these Cape buffalo bring to the ecosystem. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, you're going to have to register on the website. But once registered, just head on over to the live safari page and enter your question under the live feed.
Something very, very interesting. I didn't plan this, but this is a scene rarely seen. This is what we call a journey of giraffe. So beautiful.
Tune into Wild Earth every single day. It's in your nature.
So a little bit more spring in their step now. They've warmed up. They're all zipping around doing some burrow maintenance. The pups have already started to beg for being fed, but everyone's busy around the burrows, just doing some cleaning, They're doing some playing, some scent marking. So they are starting to head out to go foraging. So at the moment in the summer season, more than enough food around. They're not moving too far from the burrow system in a day. They just sort of stay relatively close. And then they're tending to come back to the same place every night. But once the pups are a little bit more mobile and more independent, then they'll probably move to a new food source because the entire group's been here for quite a while. So then they'll shift burrow systems for a couple of weeks to go and utilize food sources in those areas. The little pup in the middle, he's just going, he's basically telling one of the adults he wants food. Maverick is asking what's the largest group of meerkats I've ever seen. So Tswalu has one group that was over 24 that we counted at one stage. But then they start getting quite big, and then you'll find that some of the adults that want to be alpha or dominant females or males on their own will move off like a breakaway group. So 24 is the most that I've ever seen at Tswalu. So the horses, they used to be, 2 years ago, they were probably about 10. They were actually quite a big group. And then they had an unfortunate incident, I think, with a honey badger. And some meerkats left, and they literally were left with 3. And so the alpha female has subsequently had 2 sets of pups. So 3 sub-adults, which are the sort of medium-sized ones, and then 3 new pups. So they've already literally tripled in under a year. So they need to build up their numbers because then they've got more for sentry duty and guard duty. But the pups are still too young for that at this stage. So it's only really the adults that are going to take that responsibility. And as soon as those sub-adults become adults, then they'll also be expected to have that responsibility. There's a beaker, I don't know if you see the one at the back, he's just eaten something. There's a pup coming to fetch it, yeah. Did you see that one? Yeah, so one of the sub-adults went to go and fetch some food and brought it back and dropped it down there for one of the pups. Shreya is asking if the meerkats have a matriarchal society. So they've actually got a sort of an alpha male and an alpha female. But the female is more dominant than the male. She makes the decisions as to where they move, where they eat, where they sleep for the night. But they are managed by an alpha pair. So matriarchal would be like an elephant, which would just be that the female makes all the decisions, the adult female of the elephant group, and there aren't any dominant bulls with them. That's a matriarchal system, similar to hyenas as well, but with meerkats it's an alpha pair. Mutso is asking how many litters can they have in a year. So they don't have a seasonal thing. They literally just breeding, and based on their condition, as soon as the sub-adults are old enough, they'll breed again. So probably 3 to 4, but it also depends on what's happened. If the pups are successful, they've come out, like this situation here, they're about a month old now, and they're foraging and they get to adulthood, then she'll fall pregnant relatively soon, provided conditions for her are good and that there's enough food. And then she will have literally more in the next 4 months. But those pups can easily get taken or eaten by a snake in the burrow, and then they don't raise those, then she'll fall pregnant again. So it all depends on what happens to the current existing pups that she has. If there's a sort of a longer interval or a much shorter interval, depending on whether it's predator related or not. So for them, it's a conditional thing. Just as soon as they're in good enough condition, they will mate, and sort of literally every 3 to 4 months can have new ones. But if something happens to the pups, then she'll come into estrus pretty quickly to just produce more. We've seen up to 6, so 1 to 6 can be born, and she's done with only having 3 adults in this group. For her to have had another 3, it'll be very, very interesting to see how well they do. Oh, the little one's got a bug. So the question from Karen is, when do meerkats learn to stand? So they come out at about 16, 18 days from the hole, and we see them immediately trying to stand. It's almost instinct. They're just sort of mimicking what everybody else is doing. So they try. They're not necessarily that successful. Sometimes they'll end up just sitting on their bum. And then other times figuring out that the tail is the prop to hold them up, but it takes them a little bit of time and balance to be able to stand up for a long time. Even the sub-adults sometimes don't get it right, but they are attempting to stand up like a meerkat pretty much within the first 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks. They're just doing some maintenance. One of the little pups thought that there was an opportunity for food. So there's one of them's always on alert, looking. I've got its comment is totally cute. They are very, very precious when they're this size. He's leaning so far back. he's sort of leaning into his tail there. Sometimes that also means that they fall over. But he is sitting, he's not standing. So we're going to head back to the vehicle. These chaps are moving on shortly. So we're going to send you across to Steve at Pridelands.
Well, how interesting. So wonderful to spend time with playful meerkats in the morning. And, well, we're sitting on the rock being playful meerkats ourselves. But what's quite interesting, and from survival sort of strategies out here in the wild, it's always important to know direction. And obviously when the sun is up, it's normally quite easy to tell direction. But when the sun is not up, you need to understand geological formations and the orientation of this rock, as I said before, sort of comes up in these lines, these bands, these dikes, or these sills. And generally in South Africa, they have an east-west orientation. Now, the sun is coming up that side and it's setting that side. So it's not 100% east-west, but it's a general east-west orientation. So if you ever are lost, can follow these sort of dikes to get you where you're going. But how else do we navigate out in the wild? Obviously, we can do the stick and shadow method. We can do the clock method. And if you don't know those, I can detail them to you shortly. But another one that's very useful is in the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere. Just remember, these two are opposite polars. We have lichen. And now lichen, which is a beautiful, beautiful substance over here, you can actually see that on this side of the rock here, which is the general north-facing side of the rock, we don't have any lichen. As we sort of move on to sort of the east side and then sort of flow around onto the southern side, we get a lot more lichen. And it's quite evident in a number of the rocks over here. So the rock over here as well, the lichen is on this side, and it's not on that side. Okay, it's not always a win. It's not always 100%. If you find a rocky area that's very shaded from tree, you can have lichen on every side. So when you get sort of an idea of where the lichen is sitting, the lichen is always generally on the southern side in the southern hemisphere because the sun is always slightly in the north. Even in summer, it's still slightly north. Northern hemisphere, everybody, it's the opposite way around. Okay, so in South Africa, our southern slopes are the cold slopes, north slopes are the warm slopes. If you're in the UK, the warm slopes are the southern slopes. So when you walk around here and you see the orientation, you see some lichen on trees, you see it on the rocks. So this is a very nice, evident one that I think you can see at a better angle. The lichen sort of grows along this bit here, and there's some on the angle here, but there's none on the top and on the other side. Okay, so you get a general sort of orientation for that, which can help you when walking in the wilderness. And now, how does it help you if you want to keep a general sort of line? Well, you get your east-west line, and then you know you want to walk east-west, so you kind of pick up your shadow. I even sometimes, if I want to walk east, I sometimes will just put my stick in front of me and get the shadow that I figured. Okay, here's my shadow over here. You can't really see it, but on the ground it's quite easy. And then I'll keep walking so that that shadow keeps in that same line. Otherwise, you're going to be moving like this. You generally want to walk in a straight line if you're heading anywhere. Otherwise, you're going to just sort of... Generally, people who are left or right foot dominated, you cannot walk in a straight line. Guarantee it. Anybody here who wants to try and blindfold themselves and walk 100 meters in a straight line, you'll find always that you veer either left or right, depending on which foot is more dominant. Now, we used to do tests like that for eco training up in Salati. We did navigation courses. We'd blindfold people and just watch them walk to the line. Quite interesting how your body just naturally meanders. And so if you're not constantly checking direction, you're going to get very lost out here. So as a guide on a practical walk, if you want to keep yourself sort of orientated, it's important to constantly keep checking. And if I wanted to walk south, you can kind of see my line of shadows over here. I wanted to walk south from where I am. I can keep walking for the next 20 minutes, half an hour, keeping my shadow just here on my right-hand shoulder. Now, walking west is a bit easier because I just basically keep my shadow directly in front of me. Even if you go around that rocky outcrop with that tree, you'll get up on the other side and there's your shadow once again in front of you. So I like to use my stick in front if I'm walking east. North is the same as south. You just have to check where the angle of your shadow is. But orientation, everybody, is key because people get lost. And if you start to get lost, what is it that you're going to do if you get lost? You start to panic. You start to make rash decisions. And we get very uncomfortable out in the wilderness if we don't know where we're going. Okay, so I'll do a little bit of orientation with you all today. And, well, we're just going to enjoy a very nice, warm morning.
When on safari, there's nothing better than an evening spent under the stars chatting around a fire, with the sounds of the wild all around you. If you sign up to be a Wild Earth Explorer, you can build your own memories by joining our guides for regular fireside chats. Subscription payments can be made by PayPal, credit card, and now bank transfer. Wild Earth Explorers, it's in your nature.
We get asked quite regularly what are the differences between African and Asian elephants. We caught up with Haresh, who's from Leopard Trails, which is based in Sri Lanka.
Of course, size and weight is the first thing you notice. The African elephant is much bigger than the Asian elephant. Tusks in the Asian elephant, it's a very small percentage of male elephants only who have tusks. I was told that there's a theory that the African elephant's ear is in the shape of Africa. The Asian elephant has a much smaller ear. The elephant represents the bush and the jungle in Sri Lanka in a quintessential manner, and I think it's very important that we do whatever we can to protect them.
Hi everyone, my name's Daniel Fisher and I'm going to be your guide this afternoon. I'm looking really forward to taking you through and showing you all the beautiful places here at and beyond Ngala. If you have any questions, please register on our website. Once registered, go to the live page feed and post your questions underneath the live feed. Join me on my next safari through and beyond Ngala on Wild Earth. Send me live questions through the Wild Earth website and I'll answer them live from the African bush.
This is a battle of two great carnivores of the African wilderness. Whew. Whoa! You don't want to be under those jaws. Definitely, this round goes to the lion. Look at that. Fantastic.
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
Right, so we trying to maneuver around in this bush, keep up with a pride of lion as in Kahuma, which looks like they have one of their Volca male, and they can't decide whether they're going to be in which shadow. There's so much tall grass around here, so it's not easy to actually keep up with them. All movement that is happening, you only hear it from the distance, but the male I think is going to come out soon. And he was just flat right about 5 meters in front of our vehicle, so he's going to come to the left there.
Yeah, got it.
He's a little limpy.
On the spider now.
And then got a golden upweb spider. Our male leopard disappear into the bush. So looking at the female golden upweb spider on its hunt. Sitting on the middle of the nest, and it's all about making sure that whoever's caught in there, and that spider would notice immediately. Some tiny little one there as well. You can see the male. So the male golden orb spiders are so small compared to the female. The female, she's huge. Megan, so you're saying these spiders are so impressive? Yes, they are. In a way, they are seasonal. You only mainly see them this time of year. The wet season, February, March. Excuse me. And in the winter, they're not around. And they're the most survival out here because they rely on a nest, and it's so sticky though, there's no birds can play around them. If a bird get caught one of these, it would have stuck in this sticky nest or web. Also, Jerry asking how big is this spider compared to my hand. Oh yeah, my hand is quite big. So it's not that actually big. If you know of a baboon spider saw that abdomen. It's all kind of like round, but I would compare to that. So it's trying to kind of display, but this is how when she does that, she would know somebody caught, because the fly is so tiny thing and it's windy. She may miss whoever's caught, so until then she needs to kind of like little shake the web. They should know where the direction of the prey species, where it's been caught in which position from that center of the nest. So you're asking if do male produce a silk? I never seen that, but the female does all the building a nest, and the male only be around, but far from that. So male is not actually involved in building nest, and that's why he's got to be careful. Sometimes he may get killed by her if he approach her so bad or she don't want it. And that's why the mating, it's not a completely mating, no. So female deposit the eggs, where male would actually try go around, also deposit his sperm within these. And that's how they carry on their life. So I'm gonna maybe move off this area and look for something else. In the meantime, I'll be sending you across to Lauren.
We've got a herd of impala here, all absolutely losing their mind. There's a leopard here. I know it. We've been scratching around. We heard the guinea fowl going crazy. We saw the impala acting very strange, and now they're alarm calling. Can you hear it? They're all very, very upset. Now I'm standing on the bonnet, as you can see, because, well, the vegetation's so thick. Oh, sorry, that's my Game Live radio. I'm going to turn it down for you all. Now, in Paul and I stopped a little while back. We could hear the guinea fowl. We could see the impala acting very strange. There's definitely, you've got to pay attention to the impala. Now, there's another vehicle coming to help us, so we're actually just going to stand off the bonnet and move for them. But that's why we stop and just stay stationary for a while and pay attention to what's going on around you. Sorry, I'm just signaling to Rex. They're still alarm calling. They came from Chitwa, running, and they're alarm calling. Yeah. Sorry, everyone. I'm just updating Rex. The more eyes and the more ears on a situation, the better. Because it's so thick right now, you've got to try and pay attention to where they're looking. So if Rex is going this way, what are you guys so upset about? You're looking at me now. I'm not going to harm you guys. Now, we're on Gowrie Main, and this is sort of the pathway that both Tandy and my Reebs are moving from Torchwood to Chitwa, Torchwood to Chitwa, constantly. And I think one of them is around. Okay, let's go forward a little bit, Paul. Although they are looking that way. I'm just going to keep my Game Drive radio up in case Rexon tries to call me. I definitely think there's a leopard here. I can feel it. How scientific is that? If you can't see tracks, you don't always have to keep your head down. You've got to use all your senses, and that was the biggest challenge for me coming to the bush. I'm so used to using different senses being underwater, being hypersensitive, but you rely on different senses, of course. You can't smell underwater, can't talk underwater, but out here, you really can. And I've found wild dogs handful of times solely through smell, not even knowing they're on the property. So when we heard that guinea fowl, very upset, jumped up a termite mound. When you see these sort of ground birds that are normally quite happily strolling along the ground, jump up a termite mound, there's a big clue. Something's wrong on the ground. They're trying to gain height. And then, when you hear all the impala alarm calling, you know something is wrong. Okay, I'm going to keep scratching around here. Hopefully I'll get lucky, but for now, over to Pinda.
Welcome back to Pinda, where we left those 3 cheetah and we went past the area where that impala carcass was. And one of my colleagues, they took a walk to follow the drag marks and found the carcass. And the tracker and the ranger, they said that it was too thick and also too rocky in that area to be able to off-road and get a vehicle in there. So we spent a little bit of time around that area, seeing if we could find anything, but we were unsuccessful. But I wish luck to Lauren, see if she can find that elusive leopard. But then we continued and we came towards quite a lot of mudwallers, and we came across this big herd of buffalo that you can see now. And they were all resting in this little open area here. Some of them had quite a lot of mud on their backs. So I think maybe even earlier this morning, they must have been mud wallowing. And maybe they know now that throughout the day they're going to be protected from the sun. They're going to be able to just continue feeding and grazing along. I can see there are also quite a couple of young buffalo in this herd. And I mean, a couple of years ago in Ambient Pinda, probably 6 or 7 years ago, we had a huge drought in this area where Punda is, in the greater Zululand area. And lots of buffaloes didn't give birth for a number of years. And it's just so amazing, I mean, to see how many youngsters there are within the buffalo herds now. I mean, I know from being on Punda for just under 4 years, there's a herd of buffalo up in the northeastern parts of Punda. And when I started on Punda, there was about 65 to 70 buffalo in it. And now, I mean, the other day I counted, and we counted around about 90 buffalo. So, I mean, that's amazing. There's been 20 young calves born in, I mean, a long time, but also a short time, which is great to see. So, I mean, I think also now with the summer rains we've had this year, all the grass and everything, I think it's going to be a good season for buffaloes. I mean, buffalo, they aren't seasonal breeders, but they breed all year round. But often they'll mostly drop their calves at around about the end of summer. Just because it is the most nutritious time of the year of the grass, as well as there's a lot of water around. Buffaloes are very, very water dependent, often drinking even 3 times a day. They'll often drink early morning, mid-afternoon, and then often just as the sun starts to set, they'll go for their late evening drink. So if you are looking for buffalo ever in the bush, that's a good time to look for them. Midday heat at water holes, or early morning, late afternoon, also around water holes. Seems like they're actually all starting to move off quite quickly on this little ridge line. I can still see a couple on the right-hand side that are on picture. This ridge line does go off into a bit of a drainage line, and maybe they're starting to feed towards that drainage line. There's one buffalo there that's giving himself a nice little scratch on that tree. There's also quite a lot of red-billed oxpeckers in the area that are feeding off all those ticks on the buffalo. I can hear them calling. I can actually hear a white rhino. To our left-hand side is quite a dense area. I can hear the rhino breathing quite heavily, so it might be worthwhile spending a little bit of time and maybe seeing if that rhino maybe comes out. I mean, you often find rhino and buffalo in the same area just because of the palatability of the grass. So, I mean, it's very palatable. So rhino and buffalo, both bulk grazers, they'll be feeding off the same types of grasses. So you often see them in similar areas. Sorry, there is just another vehicle coming past. I think we're going to spend a little bit of time here with these buffalo. Maybe even see if we can get a view of this rhino that's not too far from us. But for now, we're going to send you over to Nick at Anbion and Gala.
Welcome back, everybody, and as you can see, we are in the Timbavati River, and we have managed to find the same pride of lions that we had last night on the show. Have given us a bit of a run around this morning looking for them. We've searched several areas, couldn't find their tracks leaving this riverbed, and then returned to the exact position we were last night to find the lions. They have not moved at all. You can see the mother of one of the small ones lying there, that little one. I don't know if it's suckling or if it's just sleeping. It looks like it might just be sleeping there. Looks like it's the little male. You can see they're all relaxing this morning. It is beautiful in the riverbed. There's a nice amount of shade for them and nice and cool in the sand as well. So a really good spot for them to have spent the night and the morning as well. They didn't move last night too much, so they would have rested pretty much the whole night as well. And the youngsters probably played about throughout the evening, and this morning they are resting. It's very cute. Look. You can see the 1-year-old youngsters have now become quite accustomed to having the much smaller cubs around, and have got used to them and not too playful and inquisitive of them anymore. Beautiful to still have the Timbavati River flowing. It is just a trickle now, so I don't think it's going to be flowing for too much longer unless we do get one last burst of rain. You can see that little lion has positioned itself right next to the flowing water. Looks like it's licking its paws, maybe trying to groom a little bit. Very, very cute. These little ones are at the stage where they will start to eat meat. They tend to start feeding on meat at about 10 weeks old, and these cubs are just under 10 weeks. So they would have maybe fed on, no, they did feed on a wildebeest carcass about 2 weeks ago, but more so than fed, they just played with the tail and some of the fur. But Yapi did see one of them trying to feed on the carcass, and that carcass yesterday, I'm sure with those Ross males on it, the youngsters didn't get too much of an opportunity to feed there. But that won't be an issue for them because they'll still be able to drink mom's milk. That will suffice them as well. Oh, rolling over. Fast asleep. Very peaceful setting that we managed to find this morning. There is still one nest lying in the sun, and I think that is the mother of the 2 older youngsters, if I'm not mistaken, or it might actually be a sub-adult. And she seems to be quite content in the sun. The rest of them are all in the shade, so I'm pretty certain that that lioness is going to get quite hot in not too long, and then she might stand up and move. There's one of the other youngsters is up and moving towards us. Is the young male of the 1-year-old. And look at that belly. Very, very full from yesterday's meal. It's always easier. I mean, the cubs have much smaller stomachs than the adults, so they don't need to eat as much to fill their bellies up. So it's always a good sign when you find a pride of lions and there are youngsters around, especially youngsters like that are now weaned and have finished suckling and are now feeding just on meat. If they get a decent meal, they fill their tummy up very, very quickly and very full as well. Lots and lots of bird activity around us this morning. I can't see too many of them, but I can hear lots of them. There's some oxpeckers flying over us, and southern carmine bee-eaters that I can hear calling as well as that being a common summitable. Look at that little one grabbing onto one of the sub-adult's tails. So Karen, these lions and all lions in the bush don't mind which meat they end up eating. They do prefer to eat fresher meat, so meat that they do catch themselves. However, they're not very picky. So whether it's from a buffalo or a wildebeest or even a scrub hare, whatever they are able to catch, I think they will be quite happy feeding on it. Sometimes if something like an elephant dies of natural causes out here, an old elephant, that meat can sit for 5-6 days rotting in the sun, and lions will still feed on that meat. So they can eat quite old rotting meat as well. I don't think it's a preferred choice of theirs, but anything that they're able to catch they will enjoy feeding on. That little youngster's having a blast playing with his older cousin's tail. So Leslie, in terms of leaving the youngsters around, the two older youngsters, the two older cubs that are about just under a year old now, they probably won't get left too often anymore. They'll be moving around with the pride majority of the time. They'll be able to keep up with the lionesses and their movements. The three smallest ones, they'll still be left every now and then, because they just won't be able to keep up with the mother and the rest of the pride. And it could be anywhere between a day, 2 days, 3 days, up to 10 days in certain circumstances. The white lioness and her sister, when they were probably similar age to these young cubs that we're looking at here, maybe 1 month older than them, they were left in a bush for 9 days in a row. And that's a very, very long time. When they came out of that bush and the pride eventually reunited with those cubs, they were very, very skinny and I think very close to death at that stage. So they were lucky that the pride returned at that time. So up to 10 days, I think, is a fair, probably the maximum where the cubs will be able to survive. See, that lioness is really not enjoying the youngster playing with their tail. Must be quite sore with those sharp teeth as well. It's not their proper teeth as of yet. They've still got their milk teeth in. But they are very, very sharp, and that's also what the mother lioness will worry about when she is being fed on. So their permanent teeth only begin to erupt at around 3 months of age. And from there they push out these deciduous teeth that eventually cause them to fall out. And those teeth, obviously, the permanent teeth are used for feeding on the different sources of food that they might catch. I think we're going to stick around here. We park nicely in the shade and it's not too hot, and see what these lions get up to. But for now, we're going to send you over to Steve at Pridelands.
Well, everybody, welcome back to Pridelands. I told you we'd detail a little bit of survival techniques and how to navigate out here. And one of the easiest ways to do it takes a little bit of time. So we started about 15 minutes ago, or whenever it was last you were with us. And it's called the stick and shadow method. It's a very simple technique. All it requires is a stick that you can plunge into the ground. That will cast a shadow down onto the ground. And then you need a little handful of stones. Now, you can see I've already done 3 because the shadow was over here. And so what you do is you then, after a period of time, you then just put a stone exactly at the tip of where that shadow is falling, and you keep doing so. So the best way to do this is obviously a technique that you use if you don't have the time. If you don't have a watch, you don't have any way of telling the time, this is a very easy method to use. But the longer you do it for, 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour, the better your line will become. And so the best thing to do if you're feeling a little bit lost and disorientated, don't panic. Just sit all your guests down and show them the stick and shadow method. And put a stone, sit, have a coffee, have a chat, put another stone. And slowly but surely, as the sun moves around this axis of the stick, the shadow is going to diminish in a way that's going to give us what will eventually be an east-west line. So we're going to stay with the stick for a little while longer. We're going to allow it to do its sort of navigation for us. And then I'm going to do another technique called the clock method, which is a very useful trick as well. But that means you need to know the time. And it also needs to be able to read analog, because analog, not digital, analog, the one with the hands. If you can't read that, it's a very difficult technique to use. But if you can read an analog watch, it's very, very easy. And if you don't have a watch, but you have a digital, you can use a stick as well, and the ground and the sand. If you have a watch, you can actually use the watch to do exactly what I'm going to demonstrate afterwards. So let's have a look, shall we? Do we have time to do the other method first, Jared, and then we can come back and see how this line has progressed? Okay, so what we're going to do is allow this line to progress, and then when you come back to us, we'll show you a few more places where the stones have landed. Then we'll do the clock method for you and then see how accurate either of them are. So we're going to stay here and send you over to Anbion and Gala.
see they're still just resting. The lioness that was getting her tail chewed on repositioned. She wasn't too happy with that youngster biting at it. And I think that little lion is now trying to... Oh, it's just lying completely on its back. These little cubs are too cute. You can see on those little youngsters just how spotty they are as well. They've still got the spots all over their body. And if Odie looks at that lioness lying just behind him, behind that youngster, or behind her, you can see, I mean, that lion there is 2.5 years old, that lioness, and she's also still got the spots on. They are starting to fade a little bit, but you can still see the spots a little bit more present on her stomach and down her legs. Only got one lion here that's showing any sign of activity, and that is the cub who's looking around. You can see it's a very cute face. Amazing how quickly they've got used to the pride as well, and having all these other lions around them. In the first few times they met the pride and the other lions, they were very nervous moving around them. They were very inquisitive. But when one of the lions stood up and walked towards them, they'd always scurry back to Mom's protection and to Mom's side. And it is a rather beautiful setting that we have here this morning. In terms of their movements for the rest of the day, I don't think they are going to be moving too much. I think if there's shade here throughout the day, it would be a good option for them to lie here right in the river, in the nice damp sand where it's a little bit cooler. They've got water if they do get thirsty. And there's this beautiful breeze that's blowing through the Timbawati River. Interesting how we saw last night the elephants chasing them around, and they just sort of reposition around the elephants. And I think the elephants sort of gave up on their quest to chase these lions off, and then the lions have moved back into the riverbed. The two dominant males, after drive last night, the Ross males were roaring quite consistently throughout the night. And by doing so, they are just reaffirming their dominance in the area and their territory, and telling other male lions and other prides of lions where they are, and that they are the dominant males in this area. See, one of the youngsters now is suckling on the mother, and I think that is the young male out of the three youngsters. There is one male and two females. And we're pretty certain that this lioness only gave birth to 3 cubs as well. Can range between 2 and 4. In rare circumstances, maybe 5 or 6, but very, very uncommon. It'll be interesting to see how many cubs that other lioness has when she finally does show them to us. Completely agree with that, everyone. They have chosen a magnificent spot to rest and spend the night and the morning today as well. Oh, big stretch. Cute. So going in to fight for one of Mom's teats to also have a bit of a drink. You're just going to sit quietly and listen. You might hear those youngsters moaning and arguing with each other. The cubs are incredibly adorable, Elizabeth. I'm so glad that we get to spend time with them this morning as well. Quite special to be here on our own this morning as well with these youngsters. As I mentioned yesterday, it is just one vehicle at a time that's allowed to view them. Just being a little bit more sensitive towards them as well. There aren't too many vehicles moving around them. And it's quite a privilege. This morning, again, there's only 2 vehicles out on Ngala, on the property. So it's us and one guest vehicle. And Rowan has checked the southern parts of Ngala into the south, with hopes of finding tracks of the rest of the Birmingham Pride crossing back in, but he didn't have any luck this morning, so we think that they are still outside the property and in the Manyuleti Private Game Reserve. These youngsters are really fighting over a teat to drink from. So we're going to stick around here and see what these little ones get up to, but we're going to send you back to Steve at Pridelands.
Welcome back, everybody. In the time you've been away, we've managed to put down one more stone, and you can see that there's quite a nice line forming here. So we would draw that line like that, as I did before, and that would be the east and west line. So if you've got the east-west line, what we're always trying to find out here is north. And north, because the shadow will always fall on the southern side in the southern hemisphere, this gives us north. If you're in the northern hemisphere, that will give you south. Okay, so just if you've learned this technique from me, just remember what part of the world you're in, so you don't go and get yourself horribly lost. Now that's looking quite nice, isn't it? There's our line, north. Now let's have a look and see if we can use it with the clock method. Now the time now, what you need for the clock method, first of all, is a stick, like the one I'm holding, a nice sandy patch of ground, and a handful of stones, and you need to know the time. So I'm going to draw a clock face in the sand, nice round clock face, and now you're going to put the stick down in the middle of your circle. Where the shadow crosses the circle, you're going to put a stone, and you're going to call that 12. Okay, so if that's 12, that's 6, that over there is roughly 3, and over there is 9. Is that all happy with everybody? Okay, so the time now, James, is you could speak 8:15. Okay, so if that's 6, that's 7, that's 8. 8:15 is probably about there. Okay, so that's 8:15. Let's just draw a line from there to there, from there to there. So now we've got this triangle, and now what we want to do is we want to bisect the 12 to the 8:15 on the clock. Okay, now that, ladies and gentlemen, is our east-west line. And remember, the shadow is always falling on the southern side. Bisect that line south, and straight through the middle of the clock is north. Now, if we have a look at this one compared to that one, you can actually see that the line has worked out to be pretty much the same. Now, Gert was just checking on his phone, and he said that actually his north was showing a little bit different. But just bear in mind that this is true celestial north. We're not looking at magnetic north. When you are talking about magnetic north, wherever you are in the world, there's going to be a slight change on a compass, because the compass is taking into consideration that slight degree change that the magnetism of the poles creates. So when you are walking with a map and a compass, you'll definitely need to adjust with your compass. This is directly straight north. You won't have any adjustments required. But now, once again, I want to walk in a certain direction, stand in the middle of my circle. Okay, I know that that's north. If I want to walk in any direction, if I want to walk north, I just keep my shadow right over here on my left shoulder. If I want to walk south, I keep my shadow just at this angle on my right shoulder. If I want to walk east, I put my stick in front of me to help me with my angle of the shadow. And west is obviously the opposite. West, I can just basically walk with my shadow slightly over there. Now, bearing in mind this is going to change, so in half an hour, once you've gotten to a point, do this again. So you pick a point, That's where I'm headed. So this will help you very, very well. And what's lovely about it is you can be a little bit unconfident, a bit unsure of where you are. And you can do this and teach your guests a very nice practical way of trekking north. You can do both techniques. This one is much quicker to do. That one takes a bit longer. And then everybody gets to learn. Now, if you have a clock, bear in mind what I did over here was where the shadow fell, I called that 12. And this would be 6. Now, if you have a clock, a watch, you're going to point your 12 to the sun, and you're going to put your matchstick on the middle of your clock, and the shadow is going to fall over the 6. And then you're going to do exactly the same thing. The 8:15 time is going to take you to where you want to. It's going to give you exactly the direction that you need. Okay, I hope that's been helpful. We're going to send you back over to Tswalu Kalahari.
So, speaking of shadows, BK and I nearly drove right past this chap because look at how much of him you can actually see. His head was bending down, and as we drove past, he popped his head out over the tree, but we didn't even see him. He's so well hidden there in the camel thorn tree. This is, for some regular viewers, you should be able to recognize this gentleman with his one tatty ear. And it's been like that for a really long time. It's just like this little piece of skin that dangles on there. We don't know what happened to him or how he got that, but it could have been torn on a branch if he was in a hurry and running to get away from something. Could have been in a fight. We don't know. But he is quite unique. But happily eating his breakfast this morning. So you also noticed something else about the camel thorn pods, is that they're starting to only be left on the top of the trees. All the camel thorn pods that are on the tops of the trees, anything from a giraffe height and down, has been consumed, and the only pods that are left are the ones right on the top of the tree that they can't actually get to. So that's a very, very nutritious protein package that is very nice for the giraffe to eat, and ideal for the camel thorn to go through that process of being chewed through the giraffe's stomach and then coming out the other end. Some of the seeds need that to be viable. Emily's asking if it's easy to tell the different giraffe species apart. It is in one way because they're all what we call geographically distinct. So every single giraffe population that's different. So this is the southern giraffe found in southern Africa, and then your other giraffe, Maasai, Kenyan, Nubian, Angolan, they're all in specific areas. So those giraffe then geographically, when you're in the right region, it should be that particular species of giraffe. So South Africa, we only get the southern giraffe. And it is based on their patterns. So if you had a look at the big brown blotches all over the giraffe, the reticulated giraffe, theirs have got thin little lines, so sort of almost definite squares. And some of the others, it's almost like the little brown is like a bit of a starburst shape on the edge. So you can, if you saw pictures of them, try and put them in particular regions. Look how he's so selective, just little bits. I mean, you can imagine how many little nibbles of leaves he's got to take in a day to feed that entire body. So with the numbers of giraffe across Tswalu, they reckon that they consume almost 3 tons of food in a day. Just the sheer number of giraffe for what their food requirement is. You can just imagine putting 3 tons of those leaves in one place. It's a lot of leaves. And that's how well his camouflage works for him. I'll try go forward. We can see if we can see him peeping through the bushes. I just see the tree shaking, so I don't think we're going to get more of his face. But that's a really, really nice place to be. It's nice and shady. It's a little bit windy today, so a little bit colder this morning, but if it starts to heat up, that's the ideal place for a giraffe to actually even lie down, which they do here in the Kalahari in the heat of the day, was that they'll choose a spot like that and lie down and spend the heat of the day in the shade. So all I can see is the tree shaking at this stage, not much of his face. We'll move on from here.
It's the month of March and Wild Earth is offering you the chance to win a brand new prize. Sign up to be a Wild Earth Explorer and you could win a 5-day eco-training ranger experience for 2. Eco-training is the pioneer and leader in safari guide and wildlife training in Africa. The lucky winners can look forward to approaching dangerous game on foot, tracking and 4x4 driving, learning about animal behavior, and even spending one night sleeping out under a blanket of stars. In addition, you will also get the exclusive opportunity to join the Wild Earth team on the broadcasting vehicle. Sign up to be an explorer now, and it could be you that wins this life-changing experience. Terms and conditions apply.
Our bodies are made up of about 60% water, which means that in a very short space of time, you can dehydrate completely. A relatively efficient way of collecting water early in the morning is to take an absorbent material like a sock and to walk through the grass, absorbing the condensed dewdrops on the grass. Once the material is saturated, you can then squeeze it out into a container, or you can suck it out directly into your mouth.
Hello, I'm Marna, your Wild Earth Safari Guide from and beyond Gala. What I really like about connecting with Wild Earth viewers is that we get to speak to viewers instantly and I get to show you this beautiful property. If you want to ask me a question, register on the Wild Earth website. Simply head over to the live safari page and you can submit your questions there. Join me or one of the other guides twice a day on Wild Earth.
Looks like it's a very difficult climb because every time it tries to climb, the ground is breaking, so it slides down. But it's the only one. Look at that. That is a call of desperation with a cub. It's like, what are you doing, mommy? Oops. Oof.
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
So you can see we're still in the riverbed with this pride of lions, and that older lioness is still enjoying her morning in the sun, which I'm a little bit surprised about. It is quite warm. The sun is now starting to hit us as well, and if I was her, I would have definitely moved into the shade. So I don't think it'll be too much longer until she stands up and makes her way to the shade. As the sun is rising as well, getting higher and higher in the sky, the shade that these lions in is slowly getting smaller and smaller. There are quite a few overhanging trees behind where the lions are lying, so there will be shade in this riverbed in this specific area for most of the day. So I think they will stay here. And if OD zooms on those 3 smallest ones, you can see they are now all suckling. the noises that come out of them are very, very cute when they are trying to suckle. They all sort of moan at each other. It's quite a tricky question, Noble Rabbi. Look, I'm not 100% certain. If I had to guess, I wouldn't say too much though. Maybe a couple kilograms. You can imagine those youngsters, between the three of them, may drink a few liters of milk a day. So she might lose a couple of kilograms in that regard, but then she will also continuously produce milk. So when it is getting drunk and she's losing weight, then she will replenish that milk source as well. The tricky part comes in was when she doesn't feed, when she's unable to find food, then she might lose weight a little bit quicker. But quite a tricky question, that one. I don't think it's too much. I don't think it would affect her to a large extent. I think as long as she's able to continuously feed herself every couple of days, if she can catch something to eat, then she shouldn't be too worried about losing too much weight with those youngsters suckling on her. Tend to put their heads right in there to try and get the milk out as much as possible, and then you can see the one actually using its paws to hold on to mom, and every now and then they'll push their head right up against the mother's stomach or the lioness's stomach to just allow a little bit more milk to be released from her teats. Lots and lots of bird activity around this morning. Not the most interesting bird that I've seen, but there is one having a bath, Odid, behind, just in the river behind the lions. There we go. Not too worried about the lions. It looks like it might be a ring-necked dove. You can see how it's sitting right in the flowing water, having a really nice bath. And in doing so, it'll just be cleaning out all the dust out of the feathers. Oh, there. See how it's rubbing its head right in the water as well. And it'll clean out, as I mentioned, all the dust and dirt that gets into the feathers, as well as some of the parasites that the birds will get on them, things like mites. And then when it does leave here, it will more than likely go up into a tree or onto a nice branch, ruffle its feathers, spray all the water out, and then try and preen to clean itself. It's amazing how much life a flowing river can bring to a property, though. And for 99% of the time at and beyond Ngala, this riverbed is dry, and I've just loved the last couple of weeks having the river flowing. It's meant that we've seen a lot more bird activity along the river banks, as well as inside the water, just like that ring-necked dove was bathing, and elephants coming and drinking in the water, and then of course all the cats as well. And when the river was flowing strongly, it was quite humorous watching some of the lions and leopards trying to cross the river, because they're not massive fans of the water. Definitely the most activity that we have here at the moment is 3 youngsters trying to suckle. It's a fantastic view that we've got here as well. Imagine the lioness was lying in the other direction. We wouldn't be seeing very much, and we wouldn't be able to get around that other side just because of the amount of water in the riverbed. But I think we're going to maybe make our way on from here, maybe go check that area where those 2 males were feeding on that wildebeest yesterday, and go and check a waterhole in the east. It's been lovely spending time with these lions this morning, but for now we're going to send you over to Tswalu.
So we've come into 1 June Street, and there's a big herd of gemsbok. There's a herd of eland running away, and then there's even something on the dune that side, BK. So we've got to decide what we're having a look at. They're all running because of the wind. So as soon as we came around the corner, everybody spooked, and they started running. But the eland are on their way up the mountain. I think there's some wildebeest on the dune. Can you see the? Sorry, I'm trying to help BK. There. You see the silhouette? No, left. What? Oh, yeah, there's the eland. So the eland are running away, so we've got to keep from the eland running away. There you can see them all, and then come left a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. There we go, wildebeest. So the wildebeest are watching the eland running, and the eland were running because the gemsbok are running, and everybody was running because we came around the corner, and the wind is quite strong. So we had a 3-in-1, and then they all just dispersed in different directions. The gemsbok have settled down now that they've moved further away from us. Then they're all relaxed. So we're finding a lot more animals out in these open clearings with much shorter sour grass patches, sort of more patches of open grass, less sour grass, and better visibility for predators. It looks like if we go from the gemsbok towards the eland, it looks like they're sort of starting to go up and over the dune. So you can just imagine how big, I mean, their feet are incredibly large. And then climbing up and over the sand can't be too easy, but just watch how they manage. Nice and bulky. He's got a bit of a trot. The other one's going to not want to be left behind. I think they're still trying to figure out exactly what they were running from, because everybody else just followed the behavior of the gemsbok, and they don't actually know what they were running from. So I think I can see something else. There's springbok down there, BK, but very, very far. But you can just see the little white on the horizon there. There's a very nice big group of springbok in there. So this is the place to be. We'll carry on going down the road a little bit. Hopefully it takes us in that direction, and we could be able to get those a little bit closer. They're quite far at this stage. So yeah, also came looking in these areas to follow up on those cheetah from yesterday, because this is all good place for them to be hunting. So let's carry on exploring. We'll see if we get another view of either the gemsbok or the eland, but head around and see if we can get another view of those springbok. So whenever the wind blows, everyone's saying Tswalu seems so nice and relaxed. It's a beautiful morning out in the open plains. But it always amazes me, you can drive the dune street over and there won't be any animals, and then you come the next one over and the conditions are ideal and all the animals are here. So you never know, you just got to keep going from one dune street to the next and see who pops out. They really are in a nice open clearing there. Maybe we'll just stop for a second there. That is pretty. So this will be mostly females here, and then there'll be one dominant male in this group. Maverick's comment is he loves the markings on their faces. They are very, very beautiful. It's said to enhance their facial features, but also helps them with their temperature regulation, because the white will reflect heat, the black will absorb heat, and then you're in an arid environment where you've got both extremes. Having the markings in the right place definitely do help them with that. You can even see that sort of rounded black circle on their rump. If they wanted to warm up a little bit, they'd just expose that to the sun, and that particular area will warm up, and you probably find there's a concentration of blood vessels in that area that will then move that warmer blood through the body and help them maintain their heat. But then the predominant color of the body is more to reflect heat, and you even see the whiter color on the underside that reflects heat away from where a lot of the vital organs would be. And then having the darker stripe right underneath the eye will reduce the glare. So there are always purposes to all those colors, and you can see lots of wattle starlings moving in amongst their feet, and that'll be because as the gemsbok move, they're disturbing insects, and the wattle starlings are following them. So similar to what a cattle egret would do following a rhino or elephant. That one on the left has only got one horn. Oh no, it's one horn is upright and one horn is facing backwards and sideways. So a little bit different. Might have had knocked its horn when it was really, really young, and then it grows in the wrong direction. There's must be lots of louse flies, the little biting flies, where they are there. I'd almost say with the one on the left there, the way her belly sits, that she's probably pregnant. You just see that sort of bulge on the belly. Yes, these gemsbok are still very suspicious of me. Based on the wind. It's just purely the wind. They saw us coming, but they couldn't smell us. So then they're already suspicious. So they move off to a certain distance where they feel comfortable. So we sort of continuing to head away from them. So they've settled because they feel that we're not pursuing them. So there's a little bird I'm going to show BK. It's literally just landed. Hopefully it stays. A beautiful lesser grey shrike. And it's busy eating. It looks like one of those ground crickets. Oh, oops. Well, there it's gone. Just had breakfast. I didn't quite see what it was, but it looked like possibly one of those crickets. It's a very sort of sharp beak edge, the shrike-like beak. With his little black mask and grey head. Even he's getting blown around in the wind a little bit there. Hold on, buddy. And the wind does seem to be picking up quite strongly today. So that will affect them, birds in particular. If the wind is very, very strong, then it affects their flight. It costs them a lot more energy to fly if they have to fly against the wind. And there he goes. We seem to have lost our herd of springbok in the meantime. We're going to carry on and see if we can relocate on those springbok. We're going to send you across to Ngala in the meantime.
So welcome back everyone, and you can see we have managed to find the same elephant bull that we had yesterday afternoon in the same place that he was yesterday afternoon, maybe 100 meters south of where he was yesterday. So interesting, this morning the lions haven't moved, the elephants haven't moved, so it's quite nice, making our lives a little bit easier. You can see how he's using his trunk to pull forbs and weeds out of the ground. Doesn't seem to be going after too much of the grass. You see him pulling out the weeds that are growing around this old airstrip. And you see how he shakes them every now and then. Oh, he's having a nice look at us as well. Shakes his trunk every now and then to just get rid of that little bit of sand and earth that is attached to the roots of the plants that he's eating. You can see his right tusk, the left tusk that we are looking at from this angle. You can see how it's actually been broken off and worn down. So that means that that will be the tusk that he primarily uses when trying to dig in mud or strip bark off trees, which we've been noticing a lot of at the moment. Look at his face as well, and his skin, and how he's got mud and sand all over himself. So I'm sure yesterday in the heat he would have been enjoying himself at some of the mud wallows. And Odie, I think, can see in the background, you can see the anti-poaching plane flying over us now. Oh. So that'll be the noise that you're hearing as well. It is a guy, Bruce, who's flying over, just checking areas, making sure that there have been no incidences, and also just having a presence over the reserve, making sure anyone who comes in here knows that there are people that are trying to catch them. See, is just behind his eyes as well, you can see there's a little bit of liquid coming out of his head, streaming out the temporal glands, not too much, and I have looked at his back legs and he's not dribbling urine, so he's not in must. He might be coming out of must. Yesterday we did see him chase another young bull away, which is a sign that he is either going into or coming out, but I would expect that he's coming out just from his behavior. Oh, Odie, there's a lion. Cannot believe it. Behind the impalas. So you can see those impalas. We had no idea that that lioness was there. I think maybe the airplane flying over, she got a bit of a fright, and you can now see those impalas are staring into the bush at the lioness. So I wonder if it isn't one of the sub-adults, that one we had yesterday on the airstrip. She's not too interested. She wasn't really going after those impala. I think she just got a bit of a fright from the plane flying over them. It's a relatively unusual noise and unusual sound. I think, yeah, what Odie's saying is that this plane might be interested in landing on the airstrip, so we're just going to go onto the road. Just in case he is interested in landing here, he will sometimes make use of this just to rest a little bit, stretch his legs. So we're just going to move ourselves off the airstrip if he does want to come and land. I don't know how he's going to land with a lion and an elephant here, though. So we'll just wait here. And see what he will do is if he is quite keen on landing here, he'll try and fly over, do low flybys, and try and get the animals off the airstrip so that he is able to land. Something like an elephant, I'm not too sure how keen the elephant will be on moving away with Bruce, trying to come in and land here. I've seen him land once or twice on the strip as well. Starting to heat up here at Ngala, so I think most of the animals are going to be looking for shade. This elephant might even be looking for a little pan system or mud wallow. to try and cool himself down, but he seems to be quite content at the moment. Really is enjoying all the food that is available on this area. So, fantastic question, Andre. Bull elephants, they will only mate when they are in must, and females will only accept a bull's attempt to mate with them when they are in must. So that's when their testosterone levels are up and when they are at the peak of their breeding ability. The elephant bulls can only mate with females when they are in must. I've never seen one try that isn't in must, but maybe one might try when they're not in must, but I don't think that they will be able to impregnate a cow at that stage. See this elephant also gently flapping his ears. And I mean, especially when he flaps them out to the side, you can see just how big they are compared to his head and his body. Heard Angus on the other day from Pinda, he was saying it's about 20% of the surface area of that elephant's body. And just moving the aerial out the way, 20% of the elephant's body, and they use it to regulate their temperature. So on a hot day like today, he will be flapping his ears as much as possible, trying to, Odie's on his trunk, seeing him pull some grass out, but trying to cool himself down. And I'm sure most of you have heard some of the guides on Wild Earth and on the show speaking about it, how they are able to pump blood through their ears to cool down. I mean, the ears are very thin and they've got a very intricate network of veins or capillaries that flow through their ears. And research has shown that they can pump about 12 litres of blood through their ears every minute, which is an enormous amount. And that's their easiest way of cooling down, that and going and either swimming in a water hole or covering themselves in mud. You can imagine putting thick mud on themselves that's nice and wet. It'll create elephant and see what else there is around Ngala this morning.
Wild Earth is launching a brand new bushwalk from Pride Lands. With a slew of potential dangers lurking, it's essential to be aware of your surroundings whilst walking in the wilderness.
20 yards away from one of the most endangered species. This is a big bull.
What a moment, what a close encounter with an Ellie bull. He's just over here now. He's moved completely away.
Being on a bushwalk and seeing a leopard, I mean, it's ridiculous to be this close to a leopard on foot and for him not to run is absolutely insane. How crazy was that?
Through the gap there is just the back of the head of a male lion. He is absolutely unaware that we are here right now. I tell you, seeing lions on foot, it definitely brings out the caveman in you, this little scared human being.
Converging game path will invariably lead you to a water source, but treat all water as suspect. One of my favorite ways of purifying water is to filter out the particulates. And by just filtering it through your sock, you can clear out most of those. You can put water into a snail shell and you can boil it over a fire or using a chemical like chlorine or colloidal silver.
Hi, my name is Tristan Dix and I am a guide here at Djuma Private Game Reserve for Wild Earth. We love connecting you to the African bush and we always look forward to all of your questions. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, you'll need to register on the website. Once registered, go to our live safari page and submit a question below the live feed. Catch up with me on Wild Earth.
Okay, there's another big male coming in from our left here. Another big male, look at this. This is the one. Now you're going to see sparks fly, guys. Guys, it doesn't get better than this, eh? Yes, unbelievable. Africa, I love you, eh?
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Leopard Dam, where we've taken a bit of a stroll this morning. And this is where our buffalo herd came down to drink yesterday, and we found where they had come in, all the tracks underneath the lovely Tamboti Grove here. There's lots of tracks and dung, some tracks of some small buffalo. I was just chatting with James before about what do you do if you encounter a buffalo bull when you're walking in this sort of area. And when you have a herd of buffalo coming down to drink, they're always going to be leaving lone buffalo bulls as they go. A buffalo bull, the pressure exerted on the herd is always this pressure. So eventually over time, bulls just get tired, the herd moves off. He goes, this is a wonderful place to stay. Obviously their vigilance is not very high. So you'll be walking down like this, you know that a buffalo herd has been here. You know, there potentially could be buffalo around. Buffalo herds normally they move away from you, but a buffalo bull is half asleep and he will stand up. So you'll be walking down to the water like this. The water's edge is there. That is the buffalo. And suddenly the buffalo stands up. Now, there's two decisions that need to be made here, very important decisions that need to be made. The first thing is, how is the buffalo going to run away from you? You need to give it space. So the first thing that you'll do is you'll be walking here. The most immediate decision you do is you just move your guest straight down and you go straight to the water's edge, basically straight to over here. So what is that doing? Now, Gert can give you the periphery of what he would have seen if he was a buffalo. Now, look at the open space that he's got to the right, all the way around in that angle. That is a huge open space for the buffalo to run. But if, for example, I stood here and I didn't go that way, and I didn't open that space, and I maybe moved this way, then you're closing the buffalo between yourself and the water. And unfortunately, the only real way for him to escape is to run over you. These animals are potentially dangerous, everybody. They're not out there to get you. Buffaloes not walk around going, where are those people at? I want to kill, smash them. That's not their objective. They're just threatened. Buffalo bull on their own, they get frightened. Lions like to hunt them, and they're big and powerful, and the only way they know how to defend themselves is to push you over. And an animal of 800, 900 kilograms pushing you over, it's going to hurt. So walking down to the water's edge, you encounter a buffalo bull that stands up, just move straight down to the water's edge and then start backing away along that way. So you're basically opening up a huge channel, that whole channel over there, like a clock face. You're opening up that whole area there for that animal to run. And they generally run uphill away from the water, although if they're being attacked by lions, they will often run into water. But we're not lions. We're a very different breed altogether. So after that somber note, wonderful to be down by the water and to come down and see these wonderful scenes, and such a beautiful piece of property, such a nice sort of way to experience it on foot, being able to access these little Tamboti groves along the side of the water has really been very, very special.
So welcome back to Ambionpunda, where we sat with that herd of buffalo a little bit longer, and they went back into quite a deep drainage line and there was no view. So we decided to come back to where the cheetahs were feeding on that impala, and we found one just tucked up in the shade in the long grass. And I think the other two, they might just be a little bit deeper into the bushes. But, I mean, they've eaten quite a lot of this impala. It's quite tough to see for now, but we'll try maybe reposition in a little while and show you guys. But I think they've got very, very, very full stomachs, and they've eaten a lot for 3 young cheetahs. So I think they may just rest for the better part of the morning. Maybe while it is still quite hot, they'll be lying resting in the shade, And maybe later on this afternoon, when it does cool off a little bit, maybe these cheetahs might come and feed on this carcass. I mean, I think with it being out in the sun, they haven't tried to drag it into the bush, just because I think it is still a little bit heavy. It might start to get a little bit dry, so I don't know how long they will stay here for. I can presume, though, that they'll stay here for today, and then this afternoon or late into the afternoon, they'll most likely move off and just go and digest that food that they've eaten. And I mean, these cheetahs, they can often, if they eat a big meal like this male impala, they can often then rest for up to 3 or 4 days even, just digesting their food. But I mean, cheetahs are very opportunistic animals, so even on day 2, they still got big stomachs, they're quite lazy. If there is a good opportunity that comes about while they are resting, they will take that opportunity. So you can never say that they'll eat every 3 or 4 days. They'll eat when there's a good opportunity that comes available to them. It's quite amazing how camouflaged that cheetah is in that long grass over there. All I can see is that black ear twitching and every now and then the tail flicking up. But we're going to sit here for a little while. Maybe we'll try reposition and show the carcass. But for now, we're going to send you back over to Pridelands with Steve.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, one of the purposes of being vigilant, that's why I didn't have James in the demonstration with me just before. So if you're down at water, there's always the potential of something coming down to drink. And we've just had an elephant bull just here's bottom over there. Let's see if we can get an angle over here. Just come down to drink a little bit away from us. It's incredible how silently they can move. I'm just going to keep very quiet now. Elephant bulls are probably my favorite. Got a very small bubble around them. Not too bothered by too much. Generally, if they do encounter you, they just move slightly to the left or right without really changing behavior. Nothing really bothers them. You see, they don't have children to look after. View their hut, just turning away from us. We actually came down to this watering hole in hope of finding an elephant. Tail very soft, very relaxed. Carrying on to normal behavior. He knows we're here because we were standing by the water. The wind was blowing in his direction. It's one of the things with watering holes is you can never always have the wind in your favor. It's something you should always try and do. Rest, everybody. Let's drink. Take a few steps to the right. Conditions are okay. Wind is blowing towards him, but it was beforehand. Those we hear. See his alertness. Testing the air now. It is up a little bit. Trying to figure out if we're friend or foe. Very friendly. Showing us how big he is. Very big fellow. Awesome is that. So everybody, we're going to see what happens further with this elephant, but we're going to send you over to and beyond Pinda. But they might have something a little bit graphic, so please be warned.
Welcome back. We just repositioned the vehicle a little bit. We couldn't see that cheetah anymore. And you can see that there's lots and lots of flowers that are sitting on a little bush just behind the impala. We are going to zoom to the impala now, so if you are a sensitive viewer, just do maybe look away for now. But it's quite amazing to actually have a look from our perspective over here. You can see we just zooming out a little bit. You can have a look at that impala, and it's quite amazing to see how I spoke a little bit earlier about all the organs and how they're still intact. You can see the stomach content there. I can see some of the intestines also around, and there's actually not too much blood that's around the carcass. So that just means that these cheetahs have been very precise in maneuvering around this impala. And if we try and get a picture of the back leg, it's amazing to see how much meat they've actually eaten. I mean, there's not any meat left on the back leg. They've basically eaten everything they can off both the both the back left and right leg of this impala. And that's the most nutritious and the softest part of this impala. And that's always where they're going to start and then move up towards the front of this impala. But I think, these cheetahs are probably 5, maybe 8 or 9 meters, away from this impala. And we are having a closer look, and it looks like there is still quite a bit of meat around the shoulders of this impala. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe as it gets cooler this afternoon, if those cheetahs maybe come back and try and get a last little bit of meat off this carcass before the sun sets this evening. And then, I mean, it is starting to smell a little bit from where we are now. We're a little bit downwind from the carcass, and we can smell it. It's not horrific just yet, but I think once an animal, maybe like a hyena or even a bird, I know you're with some battaliers with Lauren earlier. Often battaliers are the first birds around carcasses. And so if a battalier comes in, maybe that will then bring in potentially a leopard or hyena. And this area we are in at the moment is quite good for leopard. We've been seeing quite a lot of fresh tracks and signs of a female leopard in this area. So I wonder how long it would take for that female leopard to be able to smell this carcass. And I mean, she is also leopards are also scavengers. So potentially they would come and scavenge off this carcass. I mean, there is still a lot of meat for her. She'll also be able to eat through a lot of the bone, where cheetahs won't actually be able to eat through some of that bone. But I think we might try a loop around and see if we can find those other two cheetah. But for now, we're going to send you over to Deirdre at Tswalu.
I'm going to unclip. So we are out in our open clearing, and I've just unclipped for a second because I want to grab a melon here that I'm going to bring closer to show BK, but I'm going to put it on the car here. But just give you an idea of how those bitter cucumbers, or the Gemsbok cucumber, has actually increased in size since the start of the rainy season. They were relatively small, and with all the heavy rains they've expanded to this. So yesterday we saw giraffe eating these. Now you can imagine that that's probably not the most comfortable thing to wrap around in your mouth, but he literally had the whole thing in its mouth. So what I'm going to do is we're going to cut it open so everyone that hasn't seen one yet can see what is inside. There's even the rotten seeds already. So nice little seeds, and everybody always says they taste rather bitter. So, but there we go. Funnily enough, they're actually part of the pumpkin family. So we call them melons, but they're part of the pumpkin family. Just take out a couple of seeds there, just to show you. So, not the nicest in choice to eat, but animals will get quite a bit of moisture from that if they want to. And they've been very, very patiently waiting for them to start getting ripe. They leave them alone when they're green, up until they start to get to this yellow. And then that's when they'll start deciding to eat them. But the creeper, the actual creeper with its leaves, they can eat at any point in time. And I'll actually show you. I'm going to pick one leaf here for you. And I'm going to put it down there. I'm going to just lean it there so you can actually see, if BK zooms in, how hairy the leaves actually are. So that's almost like a Velcro. I think it helps the creeper with the leaves sort of stick and grip onto the soil, but also probably to act as a slight deterrent. But sometimes things with hair, also those hairs actually help them trap moisture and absorb a lot more moisture, which is what makes sense, because the cucumber needs to expand and get bigger. So all of those little extra hairs can be helpful in that process. It does have quite a pretty leaf. So we've got we've only got the little mole rat there, but I don't know if you can see that little red mound of soil there. I'm going to toss our melon. So that little mound of soil means a Damara mole rat has made an expansion. So as soon as it gets, the soil gets relatively wet after the rains, if the mole rat wants to expand the size of the colony, they'll start start burrowing and pushing the soil out, so roughly sort of a rounded shape, almost of a mole rat. They don't tend to come above the surface during the heat of the day. Sometimes early in the morning and in the evenings they may come out to look for things, and I don't know if they eat these melons, but it would be interesting to see. But they're generally looking for bulbous plants underneath the ground. So it sounds like we're going to send you to Chad for a cheetah update.
So we just looped a little bit around this thicket where close to that impala carcass, and we managed to sneak a little bit of a gap into the thicket, and now we can see all three of these cheetah are resting right up in the shade of this balloon thorn tree. And I can only imagine that that's an amazing spot for them. I mean, there's no sun whatsoever hitting them. There is a slight breeze here at Anbion Punda, so I can imagine that's also cooling them down a little bit. Maybe also there's not too many flies inside of that thicket, and that's also maybe why they've gone inside there. And also the reason they've moved a little bit away from that carcass is we saw a little bit earlier how many flies were around that impala. And I mean, when you're trying to sleep, I'm sure a lot of people know when the mosquitoes are flying around your face at night, it's not a nice thing. So I think that's also why they moved a little bit away from the carcass. And now you can see they're resting up nicely in the shade. And that one's just put her head down. Still flicking those ears though. It's amazing to see them with full stomachs, because it's been a very long time since we saw them full. I mean, we did see them not too long ago, and it looked like they had fed on something quite small. So, I mean, potentially maybe a young impala or something like that they all three shared. And that's almost like a little snack for them. It's not going to fill them up for a couple of days like this male impala will. But I'm sure for the next couple of days, these cheetahs are going to be relaxing, trying to digest all that meat that they've taken in over the last day or two. It's actually quite amazing how camouflaged they are inside of this thicket. I mean, if you're just driving past and not knowing what to look out for, it'll be quite tough to see them. Often if we're looking for cheetah in long grass, we look out for the white tip of that tail. Often that's flicking about, or even the black tips of the ears. You can often see them flicking in the long grass. So that's often how we will find cheetah in long grass and in open areas. There's just another vehicle that's left the site, and that was the noise in the background, and that's why these cheetah just lifted their heads. It's amazing how, I mean, this cheetah's lying. You can see there's a little bit of sunlight on his head. But how it's lying, I mean, how does this cheetah's neck not get sore? They can often even sleep like that with their neck up, and I think they've just adapted over time to be able to do that because they are on the on the bottom of the hierarchy of the cats. I mean, you've got lion first, then leopard, hyena, and then cheetah. And with them being vulnerable and very small compared to the other cats, they need to always have their heads up, looking around for any potential threats that might be in the area. So, I mean, often if you see cheetahs out in open areas, they'll often have their head up, just like that one was doing a few minutes ago, looking out for any movements in the grass, maybe lions around, or anything like that. I can imagine it's also quite nice inside that thickets. There's not too much grass around. Daisy, so I think lions are a little bit more dull in color. I mean, they all got different spot patterns. Lions don't have any spot patterns, but I think it's for them, they've like adapted to become that tawny color. Just because, I mean, in the wintertime and in grasslands and things, when lions are hunting, that color that they are, it blends in very, very well. I mean, it doesn't seem like it, but even in long green grass, the tawny color of lions, cheetah and leopard, often they can blend in. So it gives them the best opportunity to be able to hunt and to be able to successfully stalk up to their prey and to catch their prey. So that's, I mean, I think that's why the lions are a different color to the cheetah. But even with cheetah and leopard, with those spots, I mean, cheetah having spots, leopards, rosettes, they also, it's a sort of camouflage, the spot patternings of leopard and cheetah. And I mean, they're all sort of in different areas, and the spot patternings and the camouflage is used in different ways out here in the bush. So I think we'll spend a little bit more time here with these cheetahs. I don't think they're going to go too far, but for now we're going to send you over to Lauren.
I am still on drive, everyone. I am still here. Yes, been a very long, hot day, I'm afraid. It's very frustrating for all of us. I think it's just far too hot. My goodness, I don't actually know the temperature right now, but it's soaring. Harsh reminder that summer is still very much here. And we were just behind every single animal. Tlalamba, I think, went south on Twin Dams Road. Shadulu went south on Zoe's Road. And we're just behind them all. I think the Inkohumas were frolicking around on quarantine. There's they must have been playing, lying, sleeping. But of course, I think by the time Andrew got to them, they'd moved off into the shade, just like these impala are doing right over here. Some of them are not, but some of them have done a very good job of nestling themselves in the shade. And that's the only update I have for you all this morning, I'm afraid, but I am still here. The leaves promise for this afternoon, though. There's definitely a leopard somewhere on the southern boundary. We could hear all the alarm calls, but I think we'll need to wait until it's not so hot to get them moving. Okay, I'm going to bumble a little bit closer to home. And as we do that, we're going to send you across to Andrew.
Thanks, Lauren. So since we have actually left that pride of lion in that thicket, there was no chance we can have another better view of them. So anyway, it was getting warm, so we decided to look for something else, which is pretty quiet little. We've got impalas here, it looks like all males. Browsing, grazing about. but they're also going to go to the shed during this course of the day. It started to get more warmer now than it was this morning. For a male bachelor group works better for our own survival. All they have to rely on one another. Because they even still get hunted during a daily basis in a hot day where these leopards, they do actually move even it's a hot hunt. But they just all look quiet. I don't think there's anything because they all, one of the animals they can actually give a very alert alarm call. So I'm gonna ride close to that one of the drainage line, Philemon's Deep, see if there's anything along this road.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm here in Northern California.
This is an Anna's hummingbird. We love seeing him because he brings a little magic and energy to our cold, wintry backyard.
In the winter, they politely visit one at a time, but in the summer, they gorge themselves in groups to prepare for their long migration south. As the hummingbirds fly south, over 1 million of these Canadian geese travel the Pacific Flyway from the Arctic to spend the winter with us. They like wetlands and we're in a drought, but they seem pretty happy on the dry bank of Folsom Lake here. This has been a tough year everywhere, but one good thing was we found Wild Earth, who encouraged us to relieve our stress through nature. There's a saying that
a distraction is momentary, an escape helps you heal.
I got into wildlife filmmaking because of a passion for nature and a notion that I could make a difference. Helping others fall in love with nature brings meaning to what I do. It's also a lot of fun. A couple of times per week we receive some very heartfelt messages from viewers telling us about how Wild Earth has made a difference in their life, whether it's helped them through a difficult period or simply helped them to reconnect with nature. I think that's why we do what we do.
I'm Nikki here at Ambion Ngala in South Africa. I love getting questions from viewers about all the small things within the environment and how it all is integrated with one another. If you want to ask me any questions, please simply register with the Wild Earth website, head across to the Live Safari page and then post your questions there. I'm looking forward to chatting to you on my next Wild Earth drive.
I've seen something I've never seen here before. Look at these cubs. One is crossing the river. It's being washed away, unfortunately, but I'm sure the mother is going to save her. Look at that. How beautiful. Look at that. One crossing, two to go. How cool is this?
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
So we still here watching these 3 young cheetah just sleeping in the thickets, not too far away from that impala carcass. And it was quite an overcast morning this morning, but now it seems like the the clouds are slowly starting to part, and myself and Craig sitting here in the sun, it is getting very, very hot. So these cheetahs have found a perfect little spot where they can rest in the shade. Must be nice and cool for them in there. Can hear there's also a lot of insects that are starting to call even now. There's also a couple of birds calling. But I think for now, a lot of the animals out. I mean, we saw those buffaloes a little bit earlier. I think a lot of animals are going to start seeking shelter and maybe going into some shade. Leopards, lions, all the cats, they're most likely going to be sleeping for the most part of the day now. But I think things like buffalo, elephants, rhino, they're probably going to be heading... Oh, one just rolled over and it's got its foot on the other cheetah. They're going to most likely be heading towards water or heading towards mud wallows where they can just rest for the afternoon. I couldn't think of a better spot to be today than in a pool. Maybe with a little bit of shade, just enjoying this beautiful autumn morning. Shame that one cheetah's just put its legs over the other cheetah. So Jerome, thank you for your question. So these collars are temporary, so we'll keep them on for a little bit. I can't tell you exactly how long we'll keep them on for, but if I had to guess, I would say probably another 6 months or so. Probably until these cheetahs are at the age where they'll would have normally left their mother, which would be at about 1.5 years old. They are now about 10 or 11 months old, so I would say 6 or 7 months, that's when we'll then take that collar off. And hopefully by then, I mean, we know these cheetahs, hopefully that by then they'll be fully independent and they'll be able to go off on their own. The male, hopefully he goes and finds a territory for himself, potential mate, and hopefully these females go off and find other males that they can potentially mate with. But Jerome, I hope you will continue watching and watch the life of these 3 subadult cheetahs. It's been quite an incredible morning here on Punda. I mean, to see these cheetah feeding, now sleeping, and I'm sure all over the South Africa where the safaris are. It was a very, very good morning out. And I just want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll catch you 183, 3:30 this afternoon.